Um, it's kind of cold out there. I got not a lot of new stuff, but some new stuff to talk about. So I guess I'll start. Well, I guess I'll start in with China. China is kind of upset because of missile systems going in. You know, all these missile interceptors going in to basically, surround China. So they've been bitching about that for the past week. So they apparently, there's a U.S. satellite photo, which again, it's a grainy black and white 1970s looking photo of some objects that could be missile systems. Apparently they're putting up missile interceptors and mobile missiles. Apparently they're putting them up all over the place. On some islands and stuff like that from what they're hearing. Whether that's true or not, who knows, because NATO tends to like to do that. That said, between North Korea and South Korea, that's been going on quite, I don't know if you guys heard about the poop raids or not. If you did know, basically toilet paper with toilet paper rolls with the leader of South Korea on it, and cigarette butts and feces mushed into it, and they basically ballooned it over to South Korea. In other words, they shit-bombed them. That's pretty bizarre. But so with that said, Russia has also got its missile systems all ready to go and all that. But it looks like the U.S. Missile program, again, billions of dollars they can't account for, and apparently these things don't work. Like they're not going to work properly. The PAC-3 missile systems, under controlled conditions, can sometimes intercept at a rate of 90%, which is still not good enough. It's still not good enough. Even at 100%, it wouldn't be good enough. Why? Because it's a numbers game. You have enough interceptors. Every re-entry vehicle that the Russians have is going to be flinging off 10 warheads. Times that by, 5,000? It's a lot of... That's a lot of... we don't really know exactly what the Russians have. After 91, I believe it was, or 96, George Bush Sr. and Gorbachev had a deal and to de-escalate, or maybe that was 97, George Bush Jr. Anyway, one of the George Bushes, anyway. They were supposed to de-escalate. And they did on the U.S. side. They went from a PAC-3 missile to a PAC-1, which is the Minuteman missile. And what they did, instead of having 3 warheads on it, they only had 1. Now, the problem is pretty much all America's nukes are the B-61 nukes, and there's a few others, are aircraft deliverable. Most of them are drop nukes like the B-61, and PAC-3 missiles. So they don't really have anything mobile. The Russians, on the other hand, have air, land, sea, everything like that. I mean, you can also fire, nukes from warships and stuff like that. But the Russians just have much more of it. But the big one is the mobility. Missile silos are kind of becoming a thing of the past because they're targeted right away. So they could lose the advantage of first strike capability if they're taken out before they can even strike, right? Which, this is where these interceptors come in. The goal that NATO wants, okay, and this is, I guess, the U.S. doctrine, again, going against China and Russia, is that if they get the Russians and Chinese to start the war, they can shoot down the missiles before they get to orbit, or whatever, intercept them and that thing. But the problem is they're not accurate enough to do that. There's all kinds of problems with these missiles. So they probably work, but they're not foolproof, right? So we're basically putting Patriot missile systems all over the place in Japan and South Korea and the Philippines and Vietnam and all those places. And the thing is number one, there's not enough of them, and number two, they're not probably going to work that well if everything is launched at once, so to speak. So if the Chinese launch, I mean, again, numerical superiority just says that they're going to, basically, they're going to out-launch the interceptors. So, yeah, and yet they're still pushing more war with Russia and stuff like that. Now, if we're lucky, this whole thing is just a theater and the Russians are in on it too, and just, okay, well, we're just going to bring people to the brink and think we're there, but we're not there. But the thing is they don't account for wild cards such as the guy who's actually manning the missile. And what I mean by that is, let's say, and we can look at Operation Able Archer as an example. That drill that was done with the United States nearly fooled the Russians into thinking that they were being launched on. And if it wasn't for one guy who stood down in Russia, we would have had a full nuclear exchange. A full nuclear exchange. He said, no, there's whatever it is we're looking at, it's not a launch. He says, I know it's not a launch. And the top command told him to launch. Think about that. One man who was court-martialed after saved the world. One man. One man. Now, that was back during a generation where men used to think for themselves, regardless of country. Where, oh, well, government told me to do it, gotta do it. I mean, this guy knew what the implications of, defying a Russian order would be to launch. But he was right. He says, no, there's something wrong. It's not a launch. I know it's not a launch. And it was like, well, if we don't launch now, we're not going to get a chance to launch. It's the window of opportunity type of thing. But the guy stood down. One guy. So are we going to get that today? I don't know. I mean, we have a much more robotic personality, generations out there that are more, well, I'm going to do my job. Got to do my job. And you have to understand who they pick to, especially in the nuclear program in the States. There's some of it's propaganda for sure, but they are having problems with it because they've let down the quality control of the people who are in charge of the missile systems. It's more about gender equality and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't care who's in charge of the missile as long as they're the most sane, rational person out there and smart. I want scientists, somebody with a scientist-oriented mind in physics and saying, and something like people who can troubleshoot like that, saying, is that a launch, is that not a launch? We need to confirm that they've launched on us, that type of thing. So the interceptors, okay, well, there's no harm in the interceptors. I mean, they're defensive. But the problem with them is they also pose a threat. The threat is that when you're building up these interceptors on somebody's border, such as Russia or China, what Russia has been saying, we reserve the right to strike these things if they get too close to us. And, like in Poland and stuff like that. And they've even told the Swedes, like, look, if you guys join NATO, you're going to be put on we're going to target a warhead for you. And so why would Sweden want to do that? I don't know. I think Sweden and Norway better to stay out of NATO as much as possible. I mean, it doesn't mean they can't participate in drills and stuff like that and say, okay, well, we'll host you in our country, but we're not necessarily a member. And I know there's some countries that kind of do that. And that's the way to do it. And, we'll work with you, but we're not going to be part of you. Because once you get lobbed into that Article 5 thing, I think Article 5 is a global killer. It keeps people from doing sane, rational things. Oh, well, we made the agreement, so we have to go to war now. Okay. Those two decided, Turkey decided to start the war with the Russians, so we're going to go to war now because of Article 5. Okay. That's the mentality we're dealing with, right? So it's like, oh, geez. I guess it will be, like they say, survival of the fittest, but there's also survival of the smartest, right? So, that's how you call the herd, I guess. It's, yeah. But anyway, so Russia's going to be, they've been saying, like, don't get too close, we'll strike you. And once again, we had, NATO generals and stuff like that. Now, mind you, they could be blowing smoke, too, just to get more funding, who knows, but they're saying, we can't take the Russians. We cannot take their air power in the Baltics. And basically they're saying Eastern Europe is now going to be Russian territory if push comes to shove. That's what they're saying. And I'm not saying the Russians would win the war, and people look at, well, no, we'd kick their ass, we'd win. Again, stupidity. No, what does winning cost you? World War II cost us, 70 million? That's World War II. That's analog weapons. That really didn't go that far when you think about it. It stayed pretty much in Europe, centered around Germany. Yeah, I went into Russia a bit, went over the UK, sure. I mean, Ireland didn't get destroyed. If you were lucky and you were a Messerschmitt pilot chasing a Spitfire or a Spitfire pilot chasing a Messerschmitt, and you were able to and you both got shot down, the best place to get shot down over was Ireland. Why? Sorry, boy, the war is over for you guys. Yeah, this is a neutral country. You ain't going home until the war's over. Yeah, it was like, meet yourself a nice little Irish girl. There you go. That type of thing. So that happened. Ireland stayed neutral. So it didn't. But in World War III, Ireland's fucked even if they're not in it. That type of thing. Why? Because the fallout is just going to, radioactivity just kind of transcends borders. You know what I mean? That type of thing. But you get the idea that the Russians, like, I mean, they're every bit ready as they can be. I mean, and they're advancing on their, like, modernizing everything. By 2018, almost every part of their military is going to be completely modernized. Thank you, new Cold War. And you're now starting to hear these things like, are we in a new Cold War? Now, the mainstream media knew this right from get-go, that we've been in a new Cold War, like, noticeably since 2010. Before that, okay, yeah, there's a little bit of saber rattling here, a little saber rattling there. For example, the RAF once again scrambled to intercept some Russian bombers a couple of days ago from making this video, or yesterday or whatever. But the thing is that it doesn't really matter, because like that little stuff like that was a twice, 3 times a year event for the Russians anyway. Now they've broken all records in the past couple of years. Every year they break the record of bomber border buzzing, so to speak. Bomber border buzzing. See, we say that 10 times fast. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things that they're doing, right? Why? Just to let you know they're there. The Russians are built up in the Arctic. They've got new divisions going into the Arctic to have air, ground, and sea covered. So these guys they're not spreading themselves thin either. That's the whole thing. They're very strategically minded here. Whereas the U.S. is spreading itself thin. That's why they need more participation from NATO. The problem is the NATO countries are starting to ask themselves, are we willing to die for this and that? For example, the Ukraine, looks like Yatsenuk is getting ousted, or is ousted, or maybe they're going to try to get rid of Poroshenko because he can't get the war going. They're trying to say, no, we are at war with Russia, whether they are or they're not. Well, I mean, one thing is the Ukrainians, what I can't understand is how can they turn a blind eye to the banking system, that the Anglo-American empire that has come in and stole the wealth from their people, stole the retirement, stole their gold, stole their resources. I mean, basically, Monsanto, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs came in and got everything for free. For free. Yeah. Oh yeah, we're going to bail you out, and we're going to get all this for free. All the Europeans have to bail out the Ukrainians. Meanwhile, while the Ukrainians are fighting World War II grudges, between Russians and neo-Nazis, so to speak, and it's there. I mean, I'm not calling them all Nazis, but I mean, there is literally children of the Nazis fighting in the Azov Battalion. The Azov Battalion, looking at its origins. I mean, it's right from World War II, the 305 Panzer Division, right? So it is what it is. So the thing is that war, and you see that it's really lopsided into one side of the country, which if it was an all-out civil war, it'd be all over the country, like Syria. It's all over the country. The plan, I think, for Ukraine was like Syria, to completely destabilize it so that it would go from Ukraine into, further to get towards Russia. Now, a checkmate could be, yes, maybe the Russians do have control of the Azov Battalion or something like that, and keeping it from spreading outside of the Ukraine. That's a possibility. Because NATO wants, I think what the goal was to get Ukraine destabilized to the point where, like, again, it would spill over into the neighboring countries, then spill into the Russian, and then you get Russia involved in it. Again, the people in Eastern Europe as a whole, are slated to be killed by the New World Order. They're slated to be killed by the New World Order. We call them Illuminati, call them corrupt people. I just refer to them as really corrupt people. Almost all Zionist-led. Yes, this is another Israeli war, believe it or not. Just look at the neocons that are promoting it. It's for multiple agendas. But the big one is to throw Russia off its rocker. That's which is not going to happen. The Russians, they're 10 miles ahead on everything. Like they know what's coming. That's the thing. It's predictable. They know they're they're going to try to do cover revolutions, George Soros-wise, all over the place. So what do? Well, we kick George Soros out of Russia, and his NGO groups. Oh, well, that goes against freedom of speech. No, it's people are starting to see what it is. Like, again, how is Kissinger and George Soros and all that walking around? Like, I mean, how somebody hasn't taken them out yet? Kissinger and Putin being friends makes me suspicious. Again, I don't trust Putin either. I'm not saying he's the good guy. He's into it for his own reasons, whatever. But at the end of the day, if there's anybody keeping us out of World War III, it is the Russians. The Chinese, they have their own problems too. Like, you have to understand, the world economies have a lot to do with what's going on. It is really, really comes down to control. Not so much of what denomination of currency, but to control currencies. In other words, the New World Order wants to control the Russian ruble. They want to control the Chinese yuan renminbi and all that. So, but the thing is the Russians don't want to give that up, And that's what it's all about. In other words, it's agitation to the degree of whoever blinks first loses. And the thing is I don't think the Russians are going to blink first. So there's that going on. Meanwhile, over there in Syria, the Russians have said, look, if the Saudis, there's this massive Arab drill going on with the 350,000 Saudi troops, which are made up of Jordanians, Qataris, Djibouti, Egyptians, the Turks are doing their own end. It's all going to be all together. And then, of course, probably all those ISIS fighters that were fleeing from Russian air power and the Syrian army, SAA, pretty much, that's probably who's getting those uniforms. That's my take on it. And I think the goal is like to create an international incident. What's going to happen, and right now, like, you have to understand, Assad is making a plea to the United Nations, which, strangely enough, the United Nations doesn't seem to want to listen. That these people, we have the right to defend ourselves if these people, invade our country. Now, the Syrians are smart enough not to fire back into Turkey. And again, same thing. They're smart enough to not fire back into Turkey, Saudi Arabia, or Israel. Even though the Turks have been shelling Kurdish positions in Syria, that were the Kurds took over an area in Syria that was ISIS held. They ran them back. Again, the Kurds are one of the most effective forces fighting ISIS right now, next to the Syrian army. And the Erdogan's out there saying, yeah, no, we're taking out those terrorists. So why would they even go after the Kurds? Why would they even go after the Kurds? So it's very clear right now that Turkey is basically fighting for ISIS or whatever. They're backing terrorists. Which means the Saudis, yeah, they're kind of, the Saudi ambassador talking about democracy. It's such a, like, you listen to these people, it's like, oh my God, does anybody even believe this? Here's a guy talking about how horrible Assad is and how he has to go because he's such a dictator. I mean, you're living in Saudi Arabia, you're part of the Saudi royal family, and you're telling us about dictatorship, how horrible dictatorship is, again, from Saudi Arabia. I agree with Syrian Girl 100% on this. She said something really interesting, that the Saudi people need to revolt against the Saudi royal family. No country should be named after a royal family, like the king or whatever, one of the old kings or whatever. I guess that's what Saudi Arabia is named after or whatever. If I'm wrong, let me know. But anyway, she made a good point on that. That it needs to be given back to the people. And think about it. All this stuff will go away anyway. We need to get out of the Middle East for two reasons. Number one, if we stop backing Israel first, then we stop backing Saudi Arabia and stop backing Turkey. Yes, there's going to be a lot more bloodshed. This war isn't going to be ended anytime soon, don't get me wrong. But let the Russians finish the job. I think to date they've destroyed over something like 15,000 targets or something like that in the last month. It's just an astronaut. They had it on South Front, and it's just like, what they destroyed. Now that said, if we back out of there, okay, and isolate it, don't let it get out. If the Turks want to defend their borders, that's fine. But if they want to go, but they're going to be, the Russians, I know what they're going to do, and the same thing with the Syrians, is they're going to do what Iran's doing. They're going to be smart enough to use a proxy army. Who's the proxy army? The Kurds. This is why I don't want Canadians in that theater. It's going to be a disaster for Justin Trudeau when Turkey starts shelling Kurdish positions where Canadians are. It's going to be very, very bad. It's like, but the Kurds are not terrorists. Why are they shelling them? Maybe Justin Trudeau's, not realizing that the Middle East is it's all tribal. There are no good guys in the Middle East. It's who hates who more, right? So in that sense, it's just a tribal thing. So you need to let those tribal lines calm down. Saying, okay, well, the Kurds are going to have this area, period. The Wahhabis are going to have that area. The Sunnis are going to have that area. The Shiites are going to have this area and stuff like that. And without foreign intervention, the good thing is that they're going to run out of bullets. So at that point, they're going to have to negotiate. Think about it. The ISIS and stuff like that. Again, who's feeding them? Well, right now the United Nations, but you got all these UN trucks that keep getting into ISIS hands. Oh, geez. Well, we knew they were doing this for months and stealing the food, so we kept sending it to the same spot. Okay, you're doing my job. It's like, geez. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that needs to be isolated for that to calm down. And the other one is we need to tell Israel, no, you fight your own battles. You want to go around And they need to, in the States, what they need to do is completely gut the Congress, get all those people out of there, put every one of them under real investigation, put them all in jail. Like every administration from this one, go back to whoever's left alive, that's your top priority for world humanity. You get that out of there, make the United States a non-interventionist country, the world becomes stable. But that can only happen if they tell Israel to go fuck itself. Government-wise. Then the Israelis, okay, they want to defend their border, sure, and if you want to come to their aid, let the country choose. Let the country have a referendum on it. Do we go to Israel's aid or not? I mean, here in Canada, we had a conservative politician talking about, Israel. I'm like, never mind. You work for Canadians, not for the Israelis. Or maybe it's, or maybe he's exposing that, that type of thing. Justin Trudeau does seem to be a little more on the neutral side, on the Israel side. I think they're just more covert. I don't think they're any less the Zionist run. Zionism, we have to nip that one in the bud. That's just getting ridiculous at this point. Like, I don't care. Call me anti-Semite as much as you want. I'm not anti-Jewish people. I don't have anything against Jewish people. I don't have anything against the Israeli people, but their governments are fucking lunatics. But right now, you could say that about most governments around the world. But the difference is their governments are funding ISIS, training ISIS, again, openly admitted by Mossad generals, that type of thing. So that's what's going on. Now, the Russians, their response to Saudi Arabia, again, is, you guys invade, we're going to defend. We've told you, we're going to defend, basically Assad. And Assad's saying, well, you want to come in, that's where you're going to die. So what I think they would probably do to make it good, and this would be a very bluff charge from the Russians. Again, that 50-50 win big, lose big. Because the Russians, when they gamble, man, they're all in. Again, if they lose, they're going to lose an arm. If they win everything. But what they would do is probably let the Saudis get into the country pretty far, like well within the Syrian border. And the Syrians, what they might do is fight in a retreat to lure them in further, and then just let the Russian air power just... You have to understand, what is Syria to Russia? It's a live fire drill. That's what it is. That's all it is to the Russians. Okay, yeah, they lost one airplane so far and a helicopter, maybe two. Okay, maybe a couple of guys. But it's the best... I mean, these guys are getting real-world combat experience. It's like, this is better than what you call up in the Siberia. It's better than flying over Siberia and bombing, nothing. It's like, we got moving targets. Right on. Let's go in for the kill. It's like dobro den. Nit. That type of thing. You're dropping bombs on all these terrorists. Once again, you have Turkey out there saying, Russia's only bombing moderate rebels. The U.S. is saying it. But Russia's out there saying, no, we're bombing terrorists. You tell us who the moderate rebels are. Well, it turns out, Al Newsfront again, and a whole bunch, they did it on South Front. There was 8 groups or 9 groups that are linked. This is why the CIA has been taking these people off the terrorist watch list. Al-Qaeda and stuff like that is because there's so many groups linked to them. But it's like all these are confirmed terrorist groups globally. And, Turkey just, made a coalition, and the United States just said, we have a coalition with these guys. He just admitted that they're terrorists. So John McCain's buddies, again, it's so exposed. They're just deal with it. They're arming terrorists. Your government is arming terrorists. My government, I don't know what they're doing, but if they're on the Kurdish side, technically we're still fighting terrorists. I'm not trying to say that Canadians are better, but I'm sure we're funding these terrorists, in another way. It's, again, why are we in the Ukraine? We have no reason to be in the Ukraine. This idea of, which I think with Justin Trudeau, we probably will become more of a peacekeeper role, which I disagree with as well, because it's like, no, if you're going to put them in the danger zone, they got to be ready to fight. Peacekeeper roles just get Canadians killed for nothing. I think we should just get out of the foreign policy thing altogether. If they're not messing with us, we don't need to mess with them. Let the world take care of itself. It will settle down after a while. Yes, there's always going to be tribal wars. Yes, there's always going to be famine. There's always going to be bad things. But Canada first. That's my take on it because, it's a mess. It's a mess, But the thing is who created all the mess? U.S. foreign policy, Israeli foreign policy. That's where the biggest messes lie. I'm not saying there's nobody else in there that isn't guilty, but, again, the Russians aren't invading every other country, They're not building up on every other country's borders, but they are building up on the ones that they feel threatened by. And that also includes my country. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, if we back off the Russians, they'll back off. And I know they will. They're going to back off to a point where, okay, they'll saber rattle once in a while, but they're not going to have an entire buildup in the Arctic like that. They'll start closing down bases again. They'll start getting away from Cuba. Obama's trip to Cuba, I don't know how that one's going to play out. Again, you have to understand what they're trying to do there is not really help the Cubans. It's never about the people. What they're trying to do there is keep them from, because the Russians, they're going to be building. They've got a base there, and they're going to be opening up that thing pretty soon. It's only a matter of time before you see Topol-M's in Cuba. Just a matter of time. That will be a trump card, and that will be uncounterable. God knows how many Topol-M's and Iskanders are already in South America. You know what I mean? Like the Russians, they've pretty much got safe passage throughout South America for the most part. No one's going to mess with them. And with Venezuela being as unstable as it is, it's the same thing, right? So we could see Topol-M's there in the near future. So, yeah, that's kind of what's going on there in Syria. So the Russians have pretty much drawn the line in the sand once again. It'll be interesting to see how this gigantic, again, largest military drill in the region going on. I don't know when it's supposed to go on. It's supposed to be complete secret, but everybody seems to know about it. Yeah, and then with the attack in Turkey the other day in Anchorage with the soldiers that were killed apparently by a Kurdish terrorist, according to Erdogan, which the Turks have been really cracking down on the Kurds in the past couple of months. I mean, they've always had issues, but they're really, really cracking down on them. So I think what's probably going to happen is, before Turkey can get too far, is you're going to probably start seeing the Kurds being armed to the teeth, to the point where, again, Syria is going to pull in Iran. If anything, the Iranians are probably saying, well, they just used the Kurds to fight the Turks. You know what I mean? See, by the time the Turks win against the Kurds, they got like no men left, and then that way Syria can just run over top, right? If they want to. But I think all Syria is going to do is just protect its border. Like I've been saying, and you're seeing it, as Syria becomes more stable, and I mean, you have to look at the gains that the Syrian SAA has made, of course, with Hezbollah and Iran backing them and the Russians, and the Lebanese Communist Army. They've been helping out as well, and Hezbollah on their front. When you're looking at that, it's just a matter of time. Like, I mean, there's going to be, bombs and stuff like that, but I'm talking like hardcore ISIS is holding this town hostage type of thing. That's disappearing. So it's going to be a matter of time before they really do clear out the cities. And once they have that control, I think that's it for that game. Then at that point, all those guys, where are they going to go? I mean, yes, they have an unlimited number of ISIS fighters that are going to keep coming in. You have, the ISIS Cubs? It's kind of like Cub Scouts, but for ISIS. Hello, little boy, here's what you're going to do. You're going to use your suicide vest like this. Make it a good one. You get one try. If you don't do it good, you're going to fail. Yeah, it's like, I don't know what kind of accent that was. It was kind of a really fucked up accent there, but you get the idea. I'm just a talk show guy. I'm not actually an impressionist. Anyway, but yeah, so you got stuff like that. So recruiting tools and stuff like that for ISIS is, take the stupid people, brainwash them, and give them something that goes bang. It's like, okay, send them in that direction, and whatever. But even at that, one good thing about all these ISIS guys getting killed is that you're killing that bloodline. You're killing the real jerks, right? So at some point, it is going to get low in numbers. So it is kind of a good cleansing in a sense. I'm never for the violence of it, but it's like, well, if you can kind of get them all to kind of keep coming in, it's kind of like an ant trap if you think about it. Syria is an ant trap. It's like, okay, just keep bringing in jihadists, and there's an unlimited amount, but at some point it's going to hit an equilibrium where it's like, okay, instead of thousands coming in per week, it's only like 15 or 20. It's like, okay, I just keep killing them as they come in. It's. It is what it is, right? But I think that's Syria's. I think they know they have to stand their ground at this point, and they know that again. All they have to do is wait till the United States collapse. China, same thing. The markets in China not good. China, the world's economic growth power. They're doing great. And that's like, oh my God, they're going to collapse. They're doing great. It's bipolar over there. They got a bipolar market. All markets are bipolar. They keep telling us how great the economy is. But all they talk about is layoffs and unemployment numbers going up. Like at least here in Canada. Like I said, February is the month to watch. I think the revolution, the more violent revolution part starts more like in March on, when it starts to get warmer, in the northern latitudes. Look at Greece. Yes, the more austerity for the Greeks and stuff like that. But we got money for refugee camps and stuff like that, even though most of the refugees aren't staying. But like the tourist areas in Greece, they want to put refugee camps there. And the Greek people started protesting. Funny how they have enough manpower to police those people, but they can't protect their borders, strangely enough. It's the same in Germany and stuff like that. But I think there's like a revolt coming. Hopefully it'll be mainly peaceful, but it could, again, following in on the 10th Crusade thing, I didn't hear if anything happened in Germany over the Carnival weekend, but again, I can imagine this time around they would have the media completely under wraps on that one. The fact that I didn't hear anything about it, and it's very hard to hear. Now, I guess I get the language barrier, and a lot of German things aren't going to show up in my feed because I'm in Canada, and it's going to, they kind of keep it, like on YouTube and stuff like that. They kind of keep it regional. You're not going to get, posts from somebody way over there somewhere unless you're, linked to the, have a subscription or subscribe to them or whatever. So I get that, but I am kind of finding it kind of funny the lack of people talking on these subjects. There has to be censorship. For example, I don't know if I'm being censored or not, but I know almost all my World War III videos are getting, like they get demonetized or not monetized friendly and stuff like that. So some of that's happening. Other things happening, such as, the other day I had like 9 million plus views, and it went down to 8 million. Now it's back up to the 9 million again. Like weird stuff. Now, I'm not saying I'm being censored, but I'm thinking that it's kind of funny, and. Stuff like that. So I don't know how much they are censoring, how much they're not. But I don't think it really matters because the sentiment is you can't censor everything unless, they're going to have to pull the plug at some point. It's like there's just too much out there. People know everything. But the problem is now that people know everything, where are the good, brave law enforcement military that I keep hearing about? Like again, when you're arresting bad guys, that's good. But, get the evil ones first. Those are your top priority. These are crimes against humanity. Get them. One charge, crime against humanity. Life sentence for every person that they've had killed because of their policies. Every politician should be under that kind of scrutiny. The idea of claiming ignorance at that point, when they're so hands-on, like again, Brzezinski, Kissinger, Soros, how are these guys walking free? The Bush family, how are they walking free? The Clintons, how are they walking free? Obama, how is he walking free? Blair, how's he walking free? And it goes right up. All those administrations. Get them all. And Putin, well, get him. But that's for the Russian people to do. Yeah, so until we have law enforcement and military truly ready to protect the people, this tyranny is going to go on and on and on. Restore rule of law too, because trust me, the revolution that could come out of it, if you're law enforcement military, trust me, you'd rather arrest these politicians now, possibly lose your job and then make an example of you. But the first cop that arrests George Soros is going to go down in the history books. The first one that puts Kissinger behind bars is going to go down in history books. First one that puts the Bushes away is going to go down in history books. And all of them will be heroes. Now, that said, the judge that got killed, Scalise or whatever his name is, I don't know all about that. It does look kind of suspicious. I don't know how, Steve Pachenik, I think, was making a point. He says, none of these guys matter. Like, they don't really matter that much. Because it's the system you're trying to overthrow rather than the individual. The individuals are part of the problem, sure. Those can be dealt with by the system by putting them in jail. But the thing is if we don't put them in jail and we go into real violent revolt, which I don't call for, and I definitely hope it doesn't happen, but I have a feeling it's going to happen just because it tends to be the way humanity tends to work out. Those people, they're not going to get off scot-free on this one. The banks are trying to do everything they can to not collapse right now. You could see it all. Canada sold off the remainder of its gold. There was something like 3 tons left, which happens to be about 100 million, which happens to be about the same amount that Justin Trudeau is going to run us into debt on. So, again, once they start selling off assets and stuff like that, I'm not really worried about Canadian gold being sold off. Why? Because we can mine gold here, that type of thing. But the thing is that the whole question of restoring rule of law is what holds civilization together. Because once it falls apart, you're going to see breakaway nation states, civil wars. You're going to see all kinds of horrible things that don't need to really happen. And the globalists think they're going to win on this one, but I don't think they are. I think they're too exposed. And the thing on that is that it's going to put targets on these people at some point, if not now. just that the Supreme Court Justice guy, again, you look into that. I didn't look too deeply into it, but the guy died with it. He was an old man. Again, watch for these people dropping dead like flies. Oh, old man, he fell asleep with a pillow over his head. That type of thing. No autopsy, though, and the person that declared him dead didn't even see him. But other than that, no, nothing out of the ordinary. So, yeah, I think if I had to make a guess, although you can never prove it, yeah, you're going to see more hits like this. What for? Is it to lopside the balance of the Supreme Court in the States? I don't know. Maybe. Well, what'll tell you is who gets in will tell you. If it's an outright lefty that gets in as a replacement, it was probably a hit. Did Obama order it? No, Obama's a puppet. He's just going along for the ride. They just tell him what to say. Read off the teleprompter. That's your job. So it's not Obama making the calls here. Obama's just the spokesperson. That's all. But even that has its own evils. That has its own evils. But what did I say in my 2016 prediction? Watch for world elites getting dead. Maybe this guy was about to make a ruling on something. This judge. I wouldn't. Never mind. And this is what conspiracy theorists always tend to do. They get sidetracked by the stupidest things. Oh, how did he die? Was it okay? Never mind that. What was he working on? Real questions. What was he working on? What was he about to rule on? Watch. It probably have something to do with the banking system. Oh, yeah, so he was probably going to roll over on a bunch of banks or something like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as speculation. But look at the bigger picture. It's not what who got killed and how did they get killed. It's not clue. Motive. Why are they doing this? What is the end game? That's what you have to look at. That type of thing. And that's with anything. Why? The question why. You answer that first, everything else kind of falls into place. The how doesn't really matter. The why does. So with that, again, watch. I made it my 2016 prediction. Watch for mysterious, particularly these older men. And my cat. Oh my God. Oh, Missy, speak to me. Popsicle. I'm so bad. She's going to give me a dirty look. I know it. Are you mad at me? She won't even look at me. She won't even look at me. Oh, she wanted to go out. Her problem. Yeah. I was like, no. I was like, oh, geez. I let my cat out there like almost an hour ago. I was like, oops. It's damp enough out there today, but she'll go out. She'll stay out for a while, and then she'll come back and meow. And then blame me for the cold weather. And it's not how. It's the why. Yeah. So with that said, yeah, like I said in my 2016 prediction, watch for prominent people like that getting knocked off. Again, maybe he just died. Maybe he just died. He was an old man. But that's the thing about these old fuckers is that they're at that age where it's like, did they just actually die? Like David Rockefeller, he's like 100 and he's like 99, 100 years old. The guy just won't die, but he's been reported to have died like 10 times already. Maybe not 10 times. So how much is speculation? I mean, God knows what they got him living on. He's probably not even human anymore. He's probably got all kinds of tubes in him and whatever. He's just like a head. Yeah, New World Order. That was creepy. Anyway. But you know what I mean? That type of thing. But I'm still saying watch for bankers getting knocked off because, I mean, what's going on now with the banking system, I think I called February pretty good, that it would be just a wild ride. We're not all the way through February, but that is going to make geopolitical things more dangerous. Again, one of the goals, and you listen to the NATO military generals and the U.S. generals, it seems like all they talk about is going to war with Russia. It's like, Lindsey Graham, the idiot like that, John McCain, some of the generals, oh yeah, well, what they're really trying to do is provoke Russia or China to strike first to get a war. Maybe it'll be a limited war, who knows, a few nukes here and there, but not enough to take out the entire planet. Maybe that's been, according to Joe Skousen, that's been agreed on. Possibly. I don't think so. Because you have to understand, they might be willing to sacrifice the population, but not willing to sacrifice themselves. These are psychopaths, right? But it doesn't mean they don't have an Emperor Nero kind of complex where they can't see their own demise. So there's that to figure in, too. But with that said, I guess I'm going to leave it at about that, because I guess I'm babbling now, but I think my 2016 predictions video that I did, I should have probably made it a bit longer, because I might have to add a part 2, because I'm going to have to listen to it again, and just see, okay, we're 2 months into the year. I said the economy was going to get tough right around this time, and it is. It actually started in January, so it started a little earlier. I said, watch for people getting knocked off. There's already been a few attempts, a few people. I think, again, I can't confirm this one, but I think there was another attempt on Assad going to a funeral. Maybe that was a couple of years ago. Maybe that was recent. So take that one with a grain of salt. That type of thing. So I think by say May, April, that's when we're going to start to see the real craziness. When the weather gets warmer, I think that's when we see the revolutionary revolts really start hitting the street. Look at the Pegida thing. 14 countries had the Pegida rally. Oh, that's not as big as we were expecting. It wasn't that big. The mainstream media trying to play it down. It's like, it's a few million people that came out to the... that's a lot of people, you know what I mean? So they're playing it down. The migrant crisis. Oh, they're playing it down. Again, they have no control. I guess I'll finish up on the migrant crisis. There's going to be a big surge in the spring. It's kind of died down a bit there now, but there's going to be a new mass surge in the spring. So will Sweden deport 80,000 people? I don't think so. Will, Angela Merkel out there saying when the war's over, they have to go home? They're not, no. Here in Canada, the same thing. I mean, these people are pretty much getting permanent residency as soon as they get here, which is not fair to other immigrants that come in through the front door. Yes, technically these people are coming through the front door, which is good. How well vetted they are? Probably not as well vetted as you would think. I mean, you can't really vet people like that. Most of them are families, so that's good, but 13% of the Syrians coming in do side with the ideology of ISIS, which is not good. And we can't really afford them anyway. This idea that, again, we're making other Canadians suffer so that these people can, oh, but we're so wealthy and, shut up. Shut up at that point. So I think that's going to, as the weather gets better, again, you've seen in Greece, the police beating up on the civilians who are protesting the migrants, but yet they're not doing anything with the migrants, right? So it's kind of like, that's a revolt waiting to happen. Most of them are not staying there now. What Turkey is saying is, you give us money, we're about to open the floodgates on you again, so give us money or else. Which you would say, okay, is kind of extortion, but it's not. I can see, yes, I've been bashing Turkey a lot, but if they have the people there, okay, yes, they need the help there. So I agree with Turkey on that. I might be tough, but I am fair. I am fair. And they'd be better to be in Turkey anyway. Why? Because when the war does end, they can go home. It's easier. There's a lot of... one problem, and most countries are going to be like, they wish they had this problem, but the reason why it's hard to get the 25,000 refugees into Canada is not so much just where do we put them. There's a lot that don't want to come here. They don't want to go that far. They don't want to go that far. That said, incidents with migrants here, nothing out too much, but some of them are not that grateful. But the thing is they're economic migrants. They went from Turkey to here. Once they're in Turkey, that's the safe country. Until the Turks, turn artillery on them, I guess. But after that, they're an economic migrant. That boy that had family here, okay. One thing, nobody, the picture that everybody's gonna refugees welcome. A little boy died. Meanwhile, there's thousands of others died, and they don't care about one little boy. That little boy was safe in Turkey until his father decided to get dental work done for free, and his father's also been linked to a smuggling ring, but somehow that never makes it on the mainstream news. So who's responsible for that kid's death? The family, the father. And again, it is what it is. So these are economic migrants. He should be put in jail, let alone for reckless endangerment of his family, for free dental work. Stuff like that. So these are economic migrants. You can send them home. There's no reason why you shouldn't send them home. In fact, don't send them home. Put them in prison. Build a big compound. Yes, put them in there. Australia did something like this. And I'm pretty sure they're going to undo that because I think Canada and Australia went through regime change to the left in the last election. That type of thing. So problem is we need a new party in Canada that cares about Canadians first. Every country needs that. You need a party in Greece that cares about the Greeks first. Yes, they need to Grexit. Will the Brits actually get out of the Eurozone? The EU? No, they won't. Cameron will not do that. He's just, the people might want to vote for that, but trust me, they won't. Cameron doesn't want that. His demands are completely, but I can imagine it would be the best thing for the UK. Not in the short run. Yes, we're about to be experiencing some pain. We're going to be experiencing some short-term pain to ditch the globalist system, free trade deals, which are not free trade deals. They're just basically sending your jobs over somewhere else for cheaper labor. driving your dollar down to buy the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder, just to, again, it's a completely backwards system, because you're putting the cart before the horse here. If you take away the wealth of the people, they can't buy all this consumerism, and there's more to life than consumerism, and that's what people, I think, are starting to figure out. That the banks should, if a bank fails, it should not collapse the country. That's simple. But anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. So we'll have to keep an eye on what's going on. I'm sure there's some stuff I'm missing. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation to the channel. Here comes my cat. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself, be true to others. Always do the right thing. And say it, Missy. Missy, say it. Have yourself a great day. There you go. She said it. There we go. Hey, hi, and welcome. Okay, World War III update. So, it's kind of cold out there. I got not a lot of new stuff, but some new stuff to talk about. So I guess I'll start. Well, I guess I'll start in with China. China is kind of upset because of missile systems going in. All these missile interceptors going in to basically, surround China. So they've been bitching about that for the past week. So they apparently, there's a U.S. satellite photo, which again, it's a grainy black and white 1970s looking photo of some objects that could be missile systems. Apparently they're putting up missile interceptors and mobile missiles. Apparently they're putting them up all over the place. On some islands and stuff like that, from what they're hearing. Whether that's true or not, who knows, because NATO tends to like to do that. That said, between North Korea and South Korea, that's been going on quite, I don't know if you guys heard about the poop raids or not. If you didn't know, basically toilet paper with toilet paper rolls with the leader of South Korea on it, and cigarette butts and feces mushed into it, and they basically ballooned it over to South Korea. In other words, they shit-bombed them. That's pretty bizarre. But so with that said, Russia has also got its missile systems all ready to go and all that. But it looks like the U.S. Missile program, again, billions of dollars they can't account for, and apparently these things don't work. Like they're not going to work properly. The PAC-3 missile systems, under controlled conditions, can sometimes intercept at a rate of 90%, which is still not good enough. It's still not good enough. Even at 100%, it wouldn't be good enough. Why? Because it's a numbers game. Do you have enough interceptors? Every re-entry vehicle that the Russians have is going to be flinging off 10 warheads. Times that by, 5,000? That's a lot of... That's a lot of... we don't really know exactly what the Russians have. After 91, I believe it was, or 96, George Bush Sr. and Gorbachev had a deal and to de-escalate, or maybe that was 97, George Bush Jr. Anyway, one of the George Bushes, anyway. They were supposed to de-escalate, and they did on the U.S. side. They went from a PAC-3 missile to a PAC-1, which is the Minuteman missile. And what they did, instead of having 3 warheads on it, they only had 1. Now, the problem is pretty much all America's nukes are the B-61 nukes, and there's a few others, are aircraft deliverable. Most of them are drop nukes like the B-61, and PAC-3 missiles. So they don't really have anything mobile. The Russians, on the other hand, have air, land, sea, everything like that. I mean, you can also fire, nukes from warships and stuff like that. But the Russians just have much more of it. But the big one is the mobility. Missile silos are kind of becoming a thing of the past because they're targeted right away. So they could lose the advantage of first strike capability if they're taken out before they can even strike, right? Which, this is where these interceptors come in. The goal that NATO wants, okay, and this is, I guess, the U.S. doctrine, again, going against China and Russia, is that if they get the Russians and Chinese to start the war, they can shoot down the missiles before they get to orbit, or whatever, intercept them in that thing. But the problem is they're not accurate enough to do that. There's all kinds of problems with these missiles. So they probably work, but they're not foolproof, right? So we're basically putting Patriot missile systems all over the place in Japan and South Korea and the Philippines and Vietnam and all those places. And the thing is number one, there's not enough of them, and number two, they're not probably going to work that well if everything is launched at once, so to speak. So if the Chinese launch, I mean, again, numerical superiority just says that they're going to, basically, they're going to out-launch the interceptors. So, yeah, and yet they're still pushing more war with Russia and stuff like that. Now, if we're lucky, this whole thing is just a theater and the Russians are in on it too, and just, okay, well, we're just going to bring people to the brink and think we're there, but we're not there. But the thing is they don't account for wild cards such as the guy who's actually manning the missile. And what I mean by that is, let's say, and we can look at Operation Able Archer as an example. That drill that was done with the United States nearly fooled the Russians into thinking that they were being launched on. And if it wasn't for one guy who stood down in Russia, we would have had a full nuclear exchange. A full nuclear exchange. He said, no, there's whatever it is we're looking at, it's not a launch. He says, I know it's not a launch. And the top command told him to launch. Think about that. One man who was court-martialed after saved the world. One man. One man. Now, that was back during a generation where men used to think for themselves, regardless of country. Where, oh, well, government told me to do it, gotta do it. I mean, this guy knew what the implications of, defying a Russian order would be to launch. But he was right. He says, no, there's something wrong. It's not a launch. I know it's not a launch. And it was like, well, if we don't launch now, we're not going to get a chance to launch. It's the window of opportunity type of thing. But the guy stood down. One guy. So, are we going to get that today? I don't know. I mean, we have much more robotic personality, generations out there that are more, well, I'm going to do my job. Got to do my job. And you have to understand who they pick to, especially in the nuclear program in the States. There's some of it's propaganda for sure, but they are having problems with it because they've let down the quality control of the people who are in charge of the missile systems. It's more about gender equality and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't care who's in charge of the missiles as long as they're the most sane, rational person out there.